Yo, what's going on, everyone? Cody here with the Triathlon channel. And last year, I sat down and did a video where I compared my training from before I had a kid to after I had a kid, and it was kind of interesting. So this year, I wanted to sit down and look through my training peaks and figure out or to actually just kind of look through my training and look through what year one looked like versus year two, and talk about kind of the changes I made, uh, what I noticed, what was different for me, and kind of all the things about that. So hey, let's dive into my training peaks here and figure out what it looks like. So if we look right here, this is we'll just say year one and year two. So this was year one. I did like a deep dive, like I said in the last video, of kind of what this year entailed and what this looked like. But in general, I ended up doing 5.5 hours a week. This was September 2013, or geez, 2023 to September 2024. The races that this covered it would have been Olympic distance in October. I did a Indian Wells half Ironman in December. Took maybe a week off. Then I started racing again in let's see, whatever. I started racing again in May, and then basically raced every month a Olympic distance race throughout the year. July was the only month I didn't race. The biggest thing that this year one that I did that I screwed up that I've talked about is I really just didn't take an off season because I had kind of like no idea what that was going to look. I had no idea what racing and training was going to look like. So I figured if I just didn't take an off season, uh, maybe I won't lose fitness. Maybe I won't have to regain some fitness. That was my theory. By the time I got to the end of 2024, I was smoked and I realized I needed to take some time off. So this was kind of how that broke out as far as the totals. Again, I covered this a lot more in my other videos. So for year two, that would have been September 2024 to 25, 4.5 hours. Quite a bit less. Um, Now, it is less training. Obviously, if you look these weeks, this whole thing looks very different. Um, the biggest difference is I took a lot more off time. There's weeks where I just didn't train at all. And that was very intentional. I wanted to spend less time training. I wanted to take an off season. I enjoyed less time. I wanted to spend more time with my son and do all the things. But just to give you an idea of what this calendar, this time frame of what it covered as far as racing wise, I raced that same Olympic distance in October. Then I did the T100 event like a week after that in October. Did Indian Wells December. Then I didn't actually start racing again. It would have been until July. And then from July, August, October, raced every month. But I raced a lot less through this time frame, or at least for like the 25 calendar year, because it doesn't go all the way through. There was one more race after this in October that's not covered in this time frame because that was when my son was past that point. I would be curious to know if I looked at this without the 0 weeks, what the training volume was. I think it would be maybe a little bit closer to like the 5 hour mark or whatever. But the biggest difference is a couple things I want to talk about, like the biggest changes that I made. I wasn't doing any long distance racing this year. I knew that I was just going to be doing Olympic distance races, so I knew I could train less. But what was interesting is when I look at this, my TSS, but the intensity factor, my intensity factor was higher this year, and it was because I was doing shorter workouts, but I was just doing harder workouts because I knew I didn't have to build fitness for a half Ironman distance race. I was building fitness for a 2 hour long Olympic distance race. So I was doing less bulk and less volume and more intensity. I swam. I'm actually shocked that this percentage, oh, my mouse just froze. I'm actually shocked. Oh, it's back. I'm actually shocked. Dude, what is going on here? That oh boy, that this percentage is even as high as it is. I think it's really just a product of there being less volume in general because I didn't swim after December, I don't know if I got in the water until like May. I was just so unmotivated to swim. I swam for 16 hours total. What does it say? Completed. I'm shocked that it's even that high, to be honest. Like, because this year, what did I swim the year prior? 21 hours. So, what is that? 5 hours less. I'm shocked it's even that close. Run total. Last year, I ran 580 miles. This year, I ran 550 miles. My running was pretty similar. The biking is probably where I lost the most amount of bulk, is just volume training. 131 hours versus 167 hours. So like that's where I lost the biggest bulk, was on the bike, because I just wasn't doing like the long Saturday or weekend rides. I did almost all of my stuff on a trainer, either in the morning or during my son's nap times. So I lost a lot of like the big long weekend rides. That stuff was kind of cut out because it just didn't make for good family time. So that stuff got cut out. Interesting enough, even with this little volume that this says, my racing, as far as the Olympic distance events, I raced very good this year, and my race fitness was, I would honestly say, within 3%, 5% maybe, as good as it was the year prior. My swims were consistently, if I look back at all my races, I was 1 to 2 seconds per 100 slower swimming this year. Like, it was consistent at every race. I'd look, and then I'd look at the year before, and I was like 1 to 2 seconds a bit slower. So that's like, I mean, who knows? That could be a tide. Like, that's basically the margin of error. But that was the difference. My biking was, again, like, my biking all year, I was just like a tiny tick off, if not almost about the exact same as I was last year. My biking over the Olympic distance stuff was just so close, but like a touch off. Ironically enough, my running this year, I did some of the best running I've done in my entire life. Like all time PRs for some of the races I did. So I was racing basically as good as I did the year before. But I would be hard pressed to think, if I tried to go do like an Olympic distance race right now, there's no chance that I would be as good as I was last year. So it is kind of an interesting thing to know, like, you can build a lot of really strong fitness for a 2 hour event on pretty much very little training time. And again, if I was smart enough and I could figure it out, I would like to zero these out, like get rid of the zeros and see really what it looked like. Because I would think it's probably, honestly, like, it's probably pretty similar to the 5.5 hour, the 520. Like, again, it's 5 hours and 20 minutes a week. Like, it's still not a lot of training when you're talking about the grand scheme of training volumes. A lot of that too is I didn't swim. You cut swimming out, that's I swim. I can't really stress how unmotivated I was to swim this year. Trying to think like other things that I did this year. I mean, that's kind of it. Like, I really was focused on, and I'm glad to see that I guess I kind of stuck to it. Like, I wanted to train and race last year, and I wanted it to affect my family less, because at the end of last year, I realized I raced too much, and yeah, it takes its toll, and it burns, me out. It burns my wife out. It's all these things. Like, racing is uh, it's a sacrifice for everyone, regardless of if you recognize or not. Anyone in your family, if you're racing, like, everyone's got to do some type of part, because you're most likely skirting some type of responsibility or something, or making some type of sacrifice so you can do this. So, like I said, I raced great this year. I didn't feel like I was slow. I didn't feel like I was, way off pace. I didn't feel like I was losing everything. Um, I focused really, like, things that I can control is like my sleep and my diet. I try really hard to keep those things in line, so the little bit of a training that I do isn't going to waste, and things like that are super important, I think. But all in all, like, year one to year two, I trained a lot less, I guess, but I raced just as good. as far as the local series stuff. I think also that says a lot to, I've been at this endurance sport thing for a long time. Uh, I got into cycling when I was in my teens. I have goofed around with endurance sports for the better part of 20 plus years. I'd say the last 10 years I've been like really, really dedicated to it. At minimum, the last 11, 10 years, somewhere around there is when I really got focused in on like really endurance sports. So I think this also says that like it's just a matter of time, like a cumulative lifetime thing. Like I could probably at this point in my life get away with not a ton of I mean, obviously, like 4.5 hours of training isn't a lot, but I can feel like I could maybe get away with a little bit of that because I've just been doing it a long time and I have a really, really, really big base built up. Maybe that's my theory, but hey, it's kind of interesting to look at. Like not a lot of training, great racing came out of it. But like I said, I didn't do long races. Some of these weeks, I would say, what's my biggest week here? 9 weeks, 9 hours. Yeah, like I don't know if I did a single week over 10 hours this year, but I don't know if I really did one last year, honestly. Like I said, it's interesting just to look at and kind of see what I did. One thing I did, these gray bars, I used some training plans this year, or I tried to use some like kind of canned training plans, which I've never really do, and honestly, it didn't work at all for me. I would say that it probably hurt my training because my schedule is way too fluid and way too all over the place to try to fit into a like pre-made box. And I honestly just don't feel like paying a coach to build me a training schedule because I feel like I've done okay on my own. So that's kind of where we're at here. But hey, hopefully this video helps someone out. You can look at it. It's kind of interesting to look at year one versus year two, all the things, all the changes I've made. And going forward, training is actually ironically ramping way up right now because I'm getting ready for a 24-hour mountain bike race. That's what this little I did 7 hours of mountain biking, and during this period, that was towards the end of the year because I'm getting into mountain biking and racing mountain bikes and gearing up for a 24-hour mountain bike race next February. There's a link to a fundraiser page that I'm doing if you guys want to check that out. But hey, this was hopefully a short-ish video, gave you some kind of interesting insight into what training looks like as a parent, at least with one kid. And if we have another kid, this whole thing is going to get flipped on its ear again, and we're going to have to, go back to the drawing board and figure it out. But thanks for following along. Thanks for joining. Hopefully you like this video. We'll catch you guys next time.